Welcome to the Collingwood Rant. I'm Sly.
And I haven't seen bombing that bad since Dresden Spook.
So we're coming to you, obviously, following the victory over the Sydney Swans.
What a hard-fought victory it was too.
Yes.
Yeah, it was good to get through it injury-free though.
Well, well, geez, we started with that one early, didn't we?
Yeah, it's like a Vietnam War movie out there tonight.
Oh, Oscar Elliott went. We'll get on to the injuries. So, what do you think of the game?
Are we going to injuries? Would you just talk about injuries now? Because that's going to be our excuse for the next 6 rounds.
No. Let's. Injuries didn't factor into the mindless bombing entering the forward 50.
No, that was insane. Absolutely insane. Buck said at quarter time in the interview that Sydney were flooding back, and that resulted in us not being able to drop the eyes and deliver the ball with.
Oh, bullshit.
Yeah, I wouldn't have called that either. And you hear that, and you're thinking, I don't know whether you're deluded or what, but that is just panic bombing at the absolute max. And the thing is, you would think even with bombing, even with randomness coming into it, and I'm no mathematician, but surely that would give you a 50-50 chance of you intercepting the ball. I don't even think we got 1 in 10 chance of intercepting the ball. We kicked the Sydney defenders more often than not. Let's take a step back.
Let's take a step back.
See the little people.
So we made some changes. Brought in Trey Rusco for his first game.
Can we get excited about him? I actually thought that was not a bad
I really like the look of him.
Yep. He looks like a natural footballer with a little bit of smarts built into it.
And he kicked one free, so he fits right in.
We should give him a pay rise.
Utility, but really more known as a defender. And then
just quickly on Rusco, though, I think with a couple more weeks, we can work that 1 goal out of his system.
Yeah, well, that's if he survives a couple of more weeks at Collingwood.
That's it. But, seriously, is there an insurance company looking after Collingwood? Our premiums must be through the roof. The risk factor when you put on a Collingwood jumper must make you a bigger target than Kennedy.
You don't play Cox, you don't play Cameron, you bring in Reid. Congratulations, Ben Reid, on surviving the game.
Well, I saw him run for a period of time. He was chasing the ball going inside 50 and he was on the back of a Sydney guy. And it was like, I wonder what footstep the hamstrings are going to explode. But he got through it. So what would I know about anything?
But this is the thing. So we dominated around the stoppages, even though Grundy wasn't particularly dominant himself in the ruck. Although I did notice him and Braden Sy had a little bit of a partnership going. But we're dominating the stoppages, continually move forward. And the one I think that exemplified what I don't know, what's the word? Fucking moronic football club we are, is when...
It's more than one word.
You're right. But Oscar Elliott went down. He was obviously in a bit of trouble because he stayed down for a little while. Meanwhile, Treloar took a mark about 70 out on the right flank, the flank closer to screen. He looks for an option. Oscar Elliott gets up. He's limping. He doesn't even have his back to the... he's not even facing the ball. He's got his back to it. And Treloar goes, I might just drop the ball in the space in front of Oscar Elliott. What the fuck is... And that just typifies it. The guy's injured. He's also blocking up potential leads, and I'm not criticising Oscar Elliott. I'm just saying that's not the fucking space that you kick it to. So why are you kicking into that space? And time again, when we're going forward, we did that. We just go, fucking bomb it. Someone will mark it, won't they? And it's just stupid. I would rather the player carrying the ball decided, you know what, I'm going to go for a little bit more of a run and try and get within range, and then I'll have a shot. Rather than just bomb it stupidly. It's...
They only run when there's a chance of handballing it to someone. There seems to be an instruction with this side not to kick the fucking thing. If the game was called handball, I could live with that. But it's football, boys. Start kicking the thing.
And this is the problem: is it's become so ingrained in their DNA that they handball at least once too much. Sometimes they handball like 3 times too much. And to be fair, they've tried to introduce this into their game in Buckley's entire tenure. And they want to play that Geelong globe-trotting style of, fancy handballs, bulldogs, really quick repartee, break open packs, get clear. And they did it a few times. But the thing is, there's times they're just handballing the people in traffic, and surely they should have enough awareness to realise, okay, that's not the one to go for.
No. And look, there was one that infuriated me, I think it was in the third quarter, where Grundy had a clearance. He literally had 2 metres of space to run into. And instead of, you sit there watching going, well, it's only like a matter of nanoseconds before he'll drop it on the boot and send it inside 50. He paused and hesitated, looking for whoever it was that was in front of him to realise he was about to handball it to him. And he was surrounded by 2 Swans players. And you go, what is it you think you see, mate? Seriously. He's going to get swamped. The minute you give it to him, and sure enough, I think it's spilled free and they eventually pounced on it. But you think a kick. I mean, look, well, granted, the concession, get out of jail free card every time watching it on TVs, you can't see what's up the ground. But from a stoppage, from a centre bounce, there should be structured with that 666 nonsense to have people forward the ball. So even that shouldn't have been an excuse. But it was just poor. It's not like it's timid or it's just, it just feels of a lack of confidence and it's like what we talked about last week, or I talked about it. It's like pass the parcel. It's a hot potato. I just actually don't want to actually do anything with this. I just want to give it to you and you can make something happen. It's that approach to most of our possessions that infuriates when you watch.
The problem is it's not a recent issue. It's
turning into an amazing thing to see, though, because surely, and sorry, you'll go on a little bit with this in a second. You have to look at the actions you take each week and think, are they bearing fruit or are they actually fucking killing us? And it's having a negative impact. So why is it that we keep persisting with it? When you do the team reviews on the Monday or wherever it is, well, it's not Monday anymore. It's pretty much 48 seconds after a game finishes, 12 minutes before the next one starts. When you go back and you review the game, you sit there and you go, well, that was good and that passage was poor. You don't do that again, thanks, because it's really, really bad. Except that we seem to go out and just want to recreate. I made the comment to you earlier in the game that it's like we played the game inside of a photocopier, because that first quarter was an exact copy of what we saw against West Coast and what we saw against Freo, even down to the fact that it looked like Sydney, a shit team, were never going to miss the fucking goals at the other end.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, under Buckley, you know, the 2012, 2013 sides were really the Malthouse sides, and then you started rebuilding. And from 2014 to 2017, this is what you saw. You saw over-possession, poor decision-making, breakdown in structure, and it's back. You know, 2018 was the outlier year. 2009, they were doing this last year. It's just gotten a lot worse.
And cattle is obviously a contributing factor. We have a lot of big, borderline, if not elite players out. You lacking, I suppose, a little bit of leadership, a little bit of watch me and do as I do. It just seems to be a chaotic mess out there at times. And you'd be hard-pressed to think they've actually won this game the way we're talking. But I don't think no matter what the outcome of this game is, and even though you snuck a win in, you can't deny that first half is some of the shittest football you've seen Collingwood produce.
Well, you go, all right, so fast forward to the last quarter, and it's a close game. You only win by 9 points. Isaac Quaynor goes. Yeah, we'll get to that. But Isaac Quaynor goes off with a horrifically slashed shin, which I hope the AFL investigates how that happened.
There must have been. I have a theory about this, just thinking about it. There would have been a lot of trees growing on the ground this afternoon, and they had an arborist come in, and he's obviously felled a few of them because they were popping up before they could be effectively cut down in time. And he left a running chainsaw onto the ground. Would that make sense? Because that's the only thing, looking at the pictures of that gash after the game, that could explain such a horrific fucking injury. I've never seen anything in football equate to such a fucking nasty looking gash at that level. Maybe in suburban football where they have flick knives embedded into their shoes, like who was that woman in the Bond film, the Russian bird with the
Rosa Klebb.
Rosa Klebb. Yeah, I mean, unless she was out there playing for Sydney, I can't see what could open up your leg that big, that clean, and that effectively. But then again, I'm not a medico. What would I know?
Okay, so Quaynor goes off. Treloar apparently is off with a hamstring, as far as we know at this stage. And Hoskin Elliott, we don't know what's wrong with him. Allegedly, a knee.
Yeah, I
But
heard
he
it
also
was
had a slash,
a gash on the knee too. So
yeah.
Again, that's that wayward chainsaw.
So you had 3 guys, and Treloar and Hoskin Elliott are both experienced. Treloar was getting
injuries.
Oh, everyone at Collingwood was experienced at that.
Oh,
but you had you lost a midfielder who was getting a lot of possessions, and you lost a forward, and Quaynor was providing a little bit of dash. At that stage, if we ran out of legs, literally or figuratively, he might have understood. But the problem was, hey, given your dominance in the first half, if you actually converted, the game would have been over. You could have coasted. You could have just kicked it around for a little bit and just killed the contest. But you actually put it into a contest because you were excruciatingly poor disposal and finishing going forward. I mean, you look at the first quarter, it was 0-6. And
what was the inside 50? Did you I asked you to record these.
I did record this at one stage.
There was something like 16-1 or something, or 16-2 in the first quarter. For
the first quarter was 15
0-6 and 1 goal straight I think it was like 15 or 16-1. So for one, Sydney went in 1 and scored. We went in about 19,000 times and kicked 6 behind.
So went in 15, and none of those shots were particularly difficult. I mean, there was one that didn't even make the distance where Elliott was on the pocket. It was in the first or third quarter,
that was terrible.
And he snapped, and it got marked in the goal square. It was about 7 meters away. And while I'm starting to build a head of steam, you get that dominance in the first quarter. And I said this to you during the game over text, because obviously we can't watch it together. But
we're adhering to COVID safe rules.
Yep.
I'm wearing a mask while we're recording this, just in case.
You're dominating to that extent that the ball wasn't going in defensive 50. So why the fuck are you wasting Darcy Moore on McCartan? Why not throw him forward and throw Reid or Myercheck back? Because the ball's not going down the defence. So Moore's just getting cold. Why not throw him into the fucking play? Why not do something a little bit proactive and try and arrest your horrible forward entries and give players someone to kick to? It's just the typical unadventurous coaching, which sees us plotting a course for the fucking iceberg and nobody from the crow's nest going, we're going to hit this, and then just fucking sailing right into it.
Yeah, on the Moore thing, and I think I messaged you around this as well, is that I think at the end of the third quarter, Darcy had 3 possessions, and we had something like 75% of the ball in the third quarter. We dominated that quarter. If it's not going down the back there and you're not scoring, surely you just flick him up there just for a trial, just give him a go, at least just find touch.
Well, the biggest problem too is if you go look at this game.
Sorry, just before we go into that, he was happy to move Mio down back in the last quarter.
Yeah.
So it's not that difficult a decision to make.
But if you look at the goals the opposition in the last 3 weeks has scored, they're coming from those fucking counter-attacks over the top, waltz into an open forward 50 and kick an unpressured goal, which is why everyone's been so accurate. There's no pressure coming from anywhere for stopping anyone. So Moore's actually useless. His intercept marking is useless in this case because your structure is completely broken down, allowing opposition to fucking just waltz through. And it really was like, I was really close going in the last couple of minutes before halftime. I was really thinking, I don't actually give a fuck if we win this. I might just turn this off and give up watching it.
But that's every week. That's every week for you, though.
No, the last 3 weeks particularly. With COVID, 2 of the symptoms are a loss of smell, a loss of taste. If one of the symptoms was a loss of sight, I would have fucking run out and caught it just to avoid this game.
You've got Collingwood.
It's what you don't ever hear anything which assures you that these things are going to be remedied other than we've got to work harder, And we saw this for 4 years under Buckley, 2014 to 2017. These are the sort of games that we saw. If people can actually put 2018 away and just sort of say, okay, if we look at the one continuous flow, this is what we've been seeing, or this is what we'd seen previously. And it's happening again. It's like, we need the giant from Twin Peaks just to be fucking appear on the stage and wave his hands and say, it is happening again.
What about
I
that
have
brand
no
of gum you like? What about that brand of gum?
Oh,
It's coming back into fashion.
well, I know premierships aren't coming back into fashion anytime soon. One of the biggest issues with this is actually my biggest issue with Collingwood right now is the impermanence of the fucking club. So when I watch them, even if they were 5 goals up, I wouldn't feel confident. I'd wait for that lead to be unravelled. You know, if they're inaccurate, I'm not confident they're going to remedy that. If there's whatever the problem, I can't believe in anything in this club other than in very ineptitude to move forward. You know, so you look at the way we're playing and you think, I can't see it clicking together because the weight of evidence following this club under Buckley is grossly in favour of, you know what, we're going to just be poorly structured, poorly skilled, making poor decisions and horrible moving forward. So why should I feel that we're actually going to make this come good? Where is the evidence that's going to happen? 2018, okay, well, 1 year versus the other 8. Which is, I wonder which one I'll go for.
Well, that's the thing. You've got to look at things in the cold, the hard light of day today. Do you honestly think that this side has a flag in them?
With the injuries that are happening, with Pendlebury out for the year, I know they're saying he'll be back in 2 weeks, but he's got a soft tissue injury, so that's the year at Collingwood. And DeGoey and Howe effectively out for the year unless the year stretches into December. And now you add Treloar, soft tissue injury, so that's, I don't know what, about 18 months at Collingwood. And
he may never walk again.
Yep, you get Quaynor, who had that horrific cut, so that's going to be at least 8 to 12 weeks. I imagine if he comes, he could probably come back a little bit earlier if he's wearing a brace.
If he still keeps the leg.
Collingwood, yeah. You know, and then you got Hoskin Elliott. And, you know, I mean, I sort of found it laughable because I used to read message boards that were saying, oh, you know, we bat really deep. We've got really good depth. And it's like, where is it? You know, it's really good depth.
We're about to find out where it is.
Well, it's really great depth if the players going out are guys like, with no disrespect intended, Chris Mayne and John Noble and Josh Thomas and those sort of guys. And
don't you be bagging Nobes.
Yeah, also with Noble, after you wrote him off a few weeks ago, he's been really, really good. But I'm just sort of saying in terms of experience and how much they're contributing to the side at the moment. Oh, you know, when Josh Thomas goes out, fuck, where will we find someone else to get 8 possessions? You know, I'm sure we can find it. And
I'll give it a crack. I can be up in Queensland by Tuesday.
Well, go for it. You know, so they're the guys you can cover when you're losing key players. And no club can really, you know, if Richmond lost Martin and Cochin, they'd struggle. So you can maybe cover the loss of one of these guys, but there's so many of them going down that it's very difficult to have depth that is going to offer the same input. So with our current injury profile, I can't see us getting anywhere near a flag. And to be honest, I can't see us getting anywhere near the 8. We're probably in it at the moment, but...
So with that in mind, and this is where I like to play things tactically, what's the fucking point? Surely you play by the AFL's rules now and you go for draft picks because realistically you're not going to do it this year. So what's the advantage in finishing higher up the ladder?
There is no advantage.
The advantage is given to the shit end of the stick. You might as well be down there now. You might as well say, well, fuck it. You know, we're decimated with injuries. These guys in such a restricted short season aren't going to come back. Let's see what some of these kids have got. Let's see what Broomhead's got because he's been on the list for about 78 years. Let's play this, and strategically, we're going to get a better pick. Now, this time round, however, the caveat against that pick is you don't fucking trade it for nobody. You don't trade it for fucking someone who wants to come back home. You look at the best fucking forward is going to be in the draft next year. Whether they're there or not, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what's happening with the draft next year because there's no underlying competitions being played. But you surely must have had some sort of idea about who was coming through the system, and you could get someone potentially good. I mean, it's a Hail Mary pick, I suppose, but I don't want to just make the 8 and then disappear in the first week. There's no sense in it. You're not going to win a flag, just don't be there.
Okay, let me ask you a question in regards to this. If you took that approach, would you keep Buckley as coach? Because they're going to have a low finish.
No, I'm on Clarko next year. I think we should throw the farm at Clarko and whatever it takes. He's Look, I don't think he's potentially out of favour with Hawthorn, but he's probably the most gettable. Did we talk about this last week?
I don't know. I don't listen to us.
Well, fuck it, I'm going to do it again. He's probably at the most gettable that you could potentially sway him with a shitload of money to come over and make a difference at Collingwood. Let's not blur the facts that we only ever do something good when we have a coach that's outside of our wonderfully creative, incredibly successful system come into the club and make a difference. I don't want to see any more Collingwood people coaching the club. And it's not a slight on Bucks by any stretch of the imagination, but, 74 years at the helm is enough. I think it's... look, I don't know how you play it. I don't want to see a season where these fudgy little wins gives him a buffer. He's not out of contract at the end of the year, is he? He's still got another year or two to run?
I'm pretty sure he's got another year.
Maybe it's amicable to part ways. Again, I've never hidden the fact that I think Eddie's been there too long. I think anyone else apart from Barks wouldn't have survived at Collingwood for 9 years with such little return. How many years have we made finals? 2?
On the Buckley,
no, 3. We made finals
4.
in 12.
We've made 4.
13 we bombed out against Port. We got smashed, but then we haven't done anything since 18. We made 18, and then we did last year. Again, last year. Incredibly unconvincingly though.
Yep.
It's not what you consider a great successful tenure. Would you say that?
No, I've been one of his biggest supporters, and I think it's been a horrific return. And my problem isn't that. During the period where he was recycling the list and we're getting a lot of injuries, I could see, well, okay, we need to get games in the players before you can actually see a genuine return. But my problem is that we're back there now. We're back at this place so early, so quickly, and the list profile's terrible because you got Pendlebury, Roughhead, Howe, Greenwood, Varco, side bottom. You got all these guys who are sort of 28, 29 and over. The bottom could drop out of this list really quickly. And the biggest issue is that because of the fucking injuries we've had for years, guys who should be coming up and taking over, like Nathan Murphy and Will Kelly and Tyler Brown, they've barely played. They've barely played VFL, let alone AFL. So you're going to bring them up.
IQ's another classic example of that. Like, he started showing something last year and then he got fucking boils and he had a hysterectomy or something. But it kept him out of the game, and now he gets back into it after a couple of weeks of that. He gets this fucking thing. I know you can't blame anyone for this sort of stuff. It's freak incidents. But Christ almighty, it's like, did you have a clean run at some of this stuff?
And this is and I think we were talking about this last week off air. You go back to 2006 when you had a lot of those experienced players like Buckley, Burns, Lucuria, Rocco, Clement, Wakeland, Preston Giacomo, who were all again, on the wrong side of 28, 29, 30, and you're thinking once these guys go, the bottom's going to drop out of his side. But their drafting was magnificent. They picked up Thomas and Pendlebury. They picked up Beam side bottom, and between those two drafts were Reid, Brown, and Dawes. And then they found a lot of rookie guys, and then they had a couple of guys, like Lumumba and Maxwell and Tuvi and McCaffrey and that, who they came up as rookies. And all these guys were playing in that 4-year period. So, like in 2010, when Presty went down in the finals, Brown had games behind him to come into it. When Reid became centre-half back, he had seasons in the VFL and he had a scattering of AFL games, so he could just walk in. And so you gave these guys a pretty handy apprenticeship that they could walk in and just hit the ground running. Virtually none of the VFL players now have done that just because of the fucking injury run that this club has had for 9 years. And people who say, oh, well, it's exaggerated, it's not actually the case, you're full of shit. It's documented how bad these injuries are. And if you really want to know how bad these injuries are, you just have to look at the amount of games that a lot of these people have played compared to, the contemporaries. It's, something where we haven't been able to cultivate a next generation because someone's always going down. Or we shouldn't even say someone's going down. This week, 4 players went down. I mean, Maynard also went off of shoulder injury and came back on. But, hey, being that it's Collingwood, I'm not going to feel guaranteed that he's going to play next week or Tuesday until I actually see him run out there. You know, because you know with injuries at Collingwood, the moment someone limps off, you just think,
And they go down the rooms,
come on.
straight to the rooms.
Yeah.
They don't fuck around. They go to the bench to have a bit of a rest. They're straight down to the rooms.
And this is like, you know, I was having a discussion with someone else a while ago about like the Goey last week, you know, because we're talking about how the club, I'm not blaming the club because every club does it, but, you know, they'll fudge their injury reports. And it's like the Goey last year. Oh, he'll miss 10 days. 10 weeks later, he's still not fucking in the side. So I have no confidence that anyone who showed any impediment in this game will be back on Tuesday until I actually see him run out there.
No. And really at this stage, it's not about testing the depth. It's testing your desperation. Because who the fuck do you bring in for those 3 outs? And this is at the same time, you've got to, we play next Tuesday against the Crows. Where are we playing? Fucking Guatemala or something? I have no idea. Are we playing over there?
Australia. Yeah.
So we have to fly over there.
Yep.
So we're going to make 3 force changes no matter what now. And presumably you still want to probably rotate some players out. Like, I don't know. I don't think Grundy can play every game this year. He's labouring at some level. He needs a rest. You're going to have to make, I think even the Crows made, I think last night, 9 changes, 2 or 3 debutants, and then 6 wholesale changes. That's not an indictment on that club by any stretch, even though they're fucking shit. But it's just the nature of these quick turnaround games. You're going to have forced changes to some of your key players. And I just don't know where the stocks are that we have that we can bring anyone in at the moment. We deliberately kept, not deliberately, but no, we deliberately kept players under enormous injury clouds on the list, like Greenwood and Dunn and Broomhead. Is he still injured? I don't know.
Broomhead's like Latrine from Top Secret. Nothing's going to kill him.
But you've kept players on the list now. There's actually probably going to work out to be a detriment unless they can magically get up in the next couple of weeks. I mean, I'd love to see Greenwood back. I think he adds a fair bit of mongrel, but you know, at the same time, I sort of kind of hope that maybe he's not, because I'm still of that opinion that if we can't win the flag, let's just fucking play for pigs, get some blood into a few kids and whatnot, and let's just think about what Collingwood phase 784 looks like. Because in its current form, we're not going to go anywhere with this list. Not anywhere that's important. We can be contenders if that's what making the 8 actually means these days. But this year, not a chance. There's too many sides that are fucking way better than us that we're going to get absolutely belted upon even if we make finals. So what do you do? Do you want to go back to these old tryhards who are probably going to pack it in at the end of the year at any rate? Or do you want to just get game into and some time into the newbies, concede you're fucked, and build on a base for next year, hopefully with Clarko as coach. But that's not likely to happen. But anyway, what do you do?
Well, just to go back to the cultivation of the next generation, look at someone like Marcus Bontempelli for the Bulldogs. He's played 137 games for the Bulldogs. Cripps has played 110 for Carlton, and Cripps has had a few injuries. Matthew Scharenberg, same draft, 41 games. So he's effectively at least
How many knees in that period? About 4?
Yeah. And he's had some bad injuries, and that's just like that. I mean, obviously it's bad luck, but there's a lot of instances like that where, you know, Nathan Freeman didn't play at all. Broomhead's had a lot of injuries.
See, Broomhead's been on the list, I think, for 7 years. Did I read that right the other day?
I can check.
Put in a pause. I'll put in a pause. Let's just have some music, some thinking music. You got the answer yet?
Yeah. So what was the question? He's been on the list since 2014. So
I thought you were going to say 2004.
No, so unless he was in 13 and didn't play, I could look that up. But I'm just looking at his games. He's played 8, 11, 2, 14, and 1 in the seasons that he's played. He didn't play any last year because of the broken leg, was it?
Well, did he break his leg about 2 years ago?
He broke it in 2018, so I don't know why.
Was it like first round or something, wasn't it?
I think it was second round against GWS.
Yeah.
At the MCG. I can't remember who we played for. We played Hawthorn first round last year, wasn't it? I don't care. So he's been around for 6 years.
He's like the modern day Ben Kinnear.
He's going to qualify for life membership playing 36 games. If he had a son, his son wouldn't be able to play for Collingwood because Broomer's only played 36 games. I was going to say they might be able to play together.
They'll take him in pedigree alone.
It's I think the state of the list is a mess. The balance is totally wrong. They just are stocked with so many mid-sized players. Who's the key positioners? I mean, Will Kelly for second year has had an injury that's ended his season, and then you have Darcy Moore, obviously, and then who is it? Jack Magdon, I thought was pretty good tonight.
Actually, he was. I know I know you hate him, and
I like Magdon.
I know you like. I've been to your house a few times, and as soon as I come in the door, you're punching out that full size, life size effigy of Magdon that you have there in the lounge room. But I think he was pretty good tonight.
Nobody is good at. But this is the one that probably...
I don't think he's the answer or anything. Like, I think last week I pretty much said, why did you bother playing him? Because he's not part of the future. I don't think I've changed my mind around that. However, credit where credit's due, he was good tonight, but it is against...
The thing with Magdon, he's a rookie pick. Mark Keane played last week and struggled. He's, an international rookie. Mason Cox, international rookie.
Why didn't he get a game tonight?
I don't know. Darcy Cameron, is a low pick. And it's like, okay, so you're hoping that these really low picks will perform above and beyond, and they could, but you're expecting it with so many options. You expect it with pretty much anyone you pick up in the draft really low is going to turn into a gun. And it doesn't work that way. And you really see that we lack that sort of depth in the seniors, because that's why we brought Ben Reid out of cryogenic stasis and forward him out so he could run around and, offer his best.
Just on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Rusco, look, again, we talked about him a little bit earlier in the rant. I actually quite encouraged by his performance. However, though, didn't he play all his football as a defender? And he walks into this side as a fucking forward out of the goal square. How does that work? I actually think, considering he kicked he ended up with 1-3. He could have ended up probably with 2 or 3, which would have been an enormous debut. But again, why do you fucking prepare them for this particular role and then elevate them to seniors like Keane and then throw them up forward? I know we're fucked up forward, but really, would you be expecting these first gamers to turn things around that dramatically?
Well, I think it's really about, trying to create a facsimile of the structure that works for him, which is 2 talls in the forward line and a number of mid-sized forwards around them, which is what they did in 2018. You had Cox and Mychek as the 2 genuine talls. And that's what I think he has tried to do with, with Rusco, Mychek, and then you have Reid there. He's trying to play a little bit taller, but again, if you're just bombing it mindlessly, no one's going to fucking mark the ball. It's just this is what really frustrates me.
Even though realistically that statement's right, I would be feeling a little bit more confident with fucking Cox up forward.
I would too.
To take a mark in that bombing instance.
Yeah,
at least he has the capacity, if he's not going to mark it, that he can control it enough to bring it to the ground and maybe tap it to the advantage of someone.
Oh, look, I completely agree. But, I mean, one of the problems, you look at tonight, this is what frustrates me when Cox gets criticised. I'm not saying he's a world better. I'm not saying, if the delivery was better, he'd be kicking 10 goals every game. But you watch what happened tonight, no one is going to fucking mark that. They had options down there who weren't marking it either. You cannot blame the forward when the ball is coming down like that. And that's what really frustrates me. You throw Cox into tonight's performance, the message boards would be rife for people going, oh, well, fuck, he's just hopeless. How could he not take a mark out of the, It's like, who the fuck would have, you could have thrown Tony Lockett down there, he wouldn't be marked. You could throw fucking Gazali down there, he wouldn't be taking marks. When did you ever see a Collingwood player anywhere near the fucking ball that they were kicking? They were kicking it constantly to unmanned Sydney players. So why would you think anyone on wearing black and white stripes is going to fucking mark it?
They flagged a highlight. They flagged a passage of play. I can't remember whether it was first or second quarter because all this shit blurs into one for me. But it was Rusco led out of the square into space, and Mio had the ball just outside 50, and he didn't kick it to him. And that's the perfect opportune time. And that time that Rusco had run forward into space, Sydney had got a number of players back in, and Mio's just done the big fucking bomb into the top, and Sydney intercept marked. And you think exactly that thing that was flagged at the start is the minute that you saw Keane, not Keane, I don't know why I'm obsessing with Keane in my brain, what's left of it, but the minute that Rusco was leading forward, and you think this is a first gamer who has no fucking idea how to play forward, who's done the right thing, you haven't rewarded him for doing the right thing, and you've paused long enough to let them run back, and you've done the big manic bomb, and we've turned it over. Why not just fucking see that guy run and kick it to him? I'd rather you take the risk and have it fail than just do that fucking bomb. I've had bombs for years. I'm sick of seeing the bombs. The bombs infuriate me because they never work, but it's the most consistent, persistent thing that we do with our forward line entry since when? 2012?
Yeah, well, they've been doing it. I mean, they even fell under, they were doing it under Malthouse at times too. So, I mean, it's in their fucking DNA. And obviously, Buckley is Malthouse's apprentice. So, you're getting very similar returns in the way it breaks down. You go to the 2010 grand final, that second half was just fucking bombs, talking about the draw. The second half was just bombs. It was just moronic. And it honestly shocks me that guys are getting paid $200,000 to $700,000 a year cannot, for the life of them, just sort of look ahead. I know it's difficult that red looks like black, so, it's very confusing, obviously, when you're playing a team who wears bright red jumpers, that they look like your black and white jumpers. But fuck, how many times you look forward and not see a Collingwood jumper, and then your response, I'll just bomb it anyway. Maybe something will happen. It's moronic. It's just any player who does it more than twice should be chopped.
How many times have you seen the bomb work this year?
No, it's not going to.
I mean, obviously we're never going to fix this problem by you and I yelling at each other over a microphone, but fuck it, it is really seriously infuriating. And again, look, I'll just reiterate that we did win this game, and we're obviously a sea of positivity. But fuck, I just don't like what I'm seeing. Even though we won, and we won against a very poor opposition, we wouldn't have won that game against anybody above us of merit. We would have been decimated on that performance tonight. Should we? I mean, look. Maybe we should talk positives. Any positives? I mean, apart from Dacos's last 2.5 minutes,
Oakes' goal was brilliant.
Oakes' goal was brilliant. And the other thing, up the ground when Oakes was surrounded by 3 Sydney players, he handballed in front of him, and he got caught.
He bought Metteridge. He got a free. Yeah, he was great.
All that stuff was instrumental. And I must say, and I think I've mentioned this previously, so I don't think I'm covering anything that's particularly surprising, but I was really suspect that he was going to make it. But he's rapidly becoming someone that I really fucking enjoy watching play. And it's encouraging his growth and development. How many games would he have now, you reckon? What, maybe 40? Be less than 40, surely.
I don't think he'd be that high. I don't think he'd do that. Just, again, put some elevating music on.
He is probably being one of the few shining lights this year where you can, and that's one of the things I loved about going back to the 05, the 06 era, that even though you were shit, you could see where the madness was coming from with some of the selections. You could see where, like, the development of Thomas and Pendlebury, Beams and Sidey and all those sorts of players were coming from. They had these glimpses of absolute fucking sheer brilliance. Like that fucking goal he kicked today, it was like the Wayback Machine. There was Peabody and Sherman on the boundary line, and I'm watching his old man all over again.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely beautiful to watch. And you go, but they're the moments that makes you love football.
So tonight was his 27th game.
20, jeez. But he's tracking beautifully. And look, and I know you fucking despise Callum Brown to the point of castration, which I think is a little bit excessive. But even tonight, I don't think he was far from our worst in disgrace. He still has his klutzy moments, but fuck, he takes the game on. He really...
Yeah, well,
hits packs hard. He has some questionable decisions that he makes, but that comes down to, I guess, maturity and experience. But you almost never die wondering with some of those players, and I think I'm at the point now where I'm jaded enough to think that actually that's what I prefer. I don't want to see Maine taking the safe option to the point where the ball doesn't move. I want to see some of these guys back themselves and take risks. If it fails, fuck, put it down as a learning experience. But if you pull off something, you see like what Oaks produced tonight, you can have moments of sheer magic. And I think
the thing is, if all the great players know when to go and know when to lay off,
it's like the gambler with Kenny Rogers.
Well, Chris Main just is constantly lays off. 90% of his disposals are a little handball sideways or a little sideways or backwards kick. He very rarely takes the game on. Callum Brown, I think his first instinct is to try and do everything, and then I think he must have in his head team first, and then he does a panicking handball. But he does genuinely, which we've been saying for years, he does genuinely try and create play around him. Taylor Adams is another one who's really good at it. The goalie's great at it. And, Oaks did a really good job today because he's someone who often, will try and look for a good option or try and make play, but he seems to be showing some really good discernment to work out, I'm going to take on the game here, and no, I'm just going to lay off and buy some space and time. This is like with Sidebottom, I find him such a contradiction. You put him anywhere within 30, 40 metres of goal, he will take the game on. He'll try and do things. When you put him as a midfielder, so many times he does those little sort of, I'll run up a few steps. I know there's an opponent. I will stop, prop, and I will kick it backwards. And he does that a lot. He just sort of seems to lose that temerity as a midfielder.
Yeah, I mean, there were passages today where his smarts benefited them the way that he'd hold the ball and deliver it with some purpose into the forward line to give an option. And again, it's that thing that you've been clamouring for, is that he really is going to now, in that stage of his career, do his best work up forward. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to contribute 6 goals a week, but it's also giving opportunity assists, whatever. His smarts is greatly needed in that forward line because it's a fucking clusterfuck at the moment of ineptness.
Well, I think
that is where our system breaks down. The absolute purest is that forward line. It's just nowhere near even remotely functional.
Well, I think the other thing too is you play him up forward, and he's going to take one of the best defenders. Which means that.
What about when he's playing midfield and he pretends to be a forward? What's he going to do there?
Yeah, I don't know. But if he's drawing one of the better defenders, that means guys like, Josh Thomas, whoever the case is up there, they will draw, the next defender down. So that gives them a bit more freedom, which is what happened so well in 2018. Someone was always popping up because we just had such a spread of goal kickers that opposition couldn't mind them all. So you could, sit on Hoskin Elliott for one game and then Thomas would kick 4 or 5, or you sit on him and then someone else popped up. Right now, it just feels like a grossly unbalanced forward line. Josh Thomas, he played the sort of game that you'd be, if the list was in a healthier state, you would probably be penciling him for delistment at the end of the year.
Who's that, sorry?
Josh Thomas.
Oh, definitely. I'll talk about him in a second. I'm just going to look something up on the phone that was tweeted tonight, but keep talking.
Yeah, but he looks horribly out of form. I mean, he dropped a sitter last week that fell right into his hands at Chestnut, and he did it again today. So I don't know what's going on there, but he's a shell of the guy from 2018. I mean, he wasn't that great last year either. Here's another one when you watch him. At his best, he does take the game on. He'll try and do a few things. We're just not seeing it anymore.
Yeah, I've just found what I wanted to say. So just on Josh Thomas for a second there. Paige Kadana, do you know who she is?
Yeah.
She works in the media and stuff. She's she tweeted today, and I'm going to probably derive one of my all-time favourite players in a second. Not for anything other than my reasoning in a sec. So Paige has tweeted, is there another footballer who has had such a dramatic fall from grace than Josh Thomas? Anthony Rocker, we both love him unconditionally. Responded with, keep sinking the boots, Paige, that will help. Some of that stuff infuriates me because it's not so much that blind side-by-side attitude that you have, but you have to look subjectively at your playing list. And Ant's working with the club, that sort of thing. That sort of comment doesn't help because I don't care whether anyone was just going to sit there and blow sunshine up his ass for the next 6 months on Twitter. Josh is struggling badly at this time. You've got to call this stuff out, and you don't have to do it in a negative capacity. That's just an open-ended question that says, honestly, someone who did in 2018, how many? He would have had about 30 goals that year. His fall from grace has been pretty bad. For whatever reason, I don't know. Maybe his grandmother stubbed her toe 58 times in the last 6 months, and he's upset. I don't know, and I'll never know. But the reality is his output is terrible. At the moment, his performance is terrible, and you should be within your rights to actually call that out.
I don't recall, because he was 2 years with
not the club. I don't think Anthony needs to come out and actually make those sort of defensive statements. You have to pretty much nod your head and say, well, yeah, it's not working. For whatever reason, at the moment, it's not working. And I don't think it's something now at this stage of his career that you're going to invest a lot of time in. The end's probably closer for him than it was a couple of years ago. And you have to be harshly realistic about this stuff.
Oh, I don't think anyone's end that's Colin. They'll just keep
again, and I'll keep harping about this for the next 68 hours, is that if someone is in the inner sanctum of the club is in that defensive stance, and you probably, in some respect, you expect them to be, but you don't have to come out and publicly sort of make that sort of statement like that. I don't think that helps. It actually shows that you're sort of covering for something that's technically not going to work and probably at this stage isn't going to continue to work. That's my 2 cents. Probably makes no sense.
I'm just going to say Josh Thomas, I recall, because he came back from the drug suspension a few years ago. And I remember on these early games back, I wasn't watching because I was at a function or something, but you were texting me updates and you were just saying he's doing things he has no right to do, given his long layoff in terms of he was taking the game on. And he's just lost that. He's lost touch. He's lost his disposal is just erratically bad. It's, so I don't know what's going on there. But, I mean, I had a conversation with someone on Twitter briefly about him where I think he's really in there just...
Was it Ant?
Because he's got experience behind him. So you'd rather play him rather than someone with 2 games behind, like playing Atu would be, again, with no disrespect to Atu, just sort of saying you have a really young side, so you're just trying to counterbalance it by having a few more experienced players there who can take a few hits and who can hit the ground running. So I think that's why they're playing him, but he's got into the Tarquin Lockyer state, which, you go back years, I think, players contribute and that's great. But then in their decline, you start looking at them thinking, we could probably play a young guy who'd give us exactly the output you're now giving us. And the young guy has upside and Josh Thomas is there. So it's sad because, you don't want to see players go out ingloriously, although it happens to be common like Collingwood. But
it is a harsh game and it's a harsh competition at times. But if you want to be successful at it, you've got to make these hard calls.
But this goes back again to the list. It's like, okay, you drop him. Who do you bring in?
Are we in the 78th hour of this rant yet?
Probably. But this is the problem. Is it like, who do you bring in? So these are the sort of things like people go, we need changes. Right, who do you bring in?
In terms of bringing people in at the moment.
You can bring Atu in, great, but I don't think it's great for his development to run around having low position games. It's probably just going to hurt his confidence. I mean, unfortunately, the VFL's not there this year, so that's going to hinder his development anyway. But, there's got to be a balance of, hey, we can bring young guys in it, but at a certain point when we get too young, we're going to be too dominated. So it's actually going to be counterintuitive to their development. So we need to maintain this balance. And I don't know who you play. I mean, maybe you try that Flynn Appleby. They've been playing him up forward.
Every chance.
It's up to, it's a shame that a few years ago, Carl Kirby looked a really exciting prospect and he had health issues.
Again, the freak injuries at Collingwood.
Yeah.
Are unstoppable.
So you just look at that list and you think, who are they going to bring up? And I guess they got like a few new drafties they could bring up, but I don't know what they do other than just throwing some kids at the Wolves. And I mean, the good thing with that Roscoe is, it's his first year, but he's already pretty physically developed.
He's quite solid. I was surprised when they had the footage of him standing in the huddle at at quarter time, you think, geez, you're big across the shoulders, big across the arms. You actually look a lot more of a solidified player than most first yearers do.
Yeah, and that's why usually it takes draftees a few years to get into it, because they have to develop the physical maturity. I mean, you look at someone like that, Matt Rowell, he's already, pretty well developed. But in terms of replacements, who do you bring in that could hit the ground running in that VFL? And the other problem is, like, you go back a few years ago to 2018 when you brought Stephenson in, he was back then a pretty freakish talent. So you brought him in and he could already mix it at AFL level. He wasn't always consistent and all that, but he was always good for a few goals. Another one, he kicked about 40 goals in that year. You look at Rowell and Rankine and all that, they can pretty much play straight away. But most draftees take a few years to get into it. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we have anyone on the list who really can just come into the seniors and provide such a contribution that it's going to be more invaluable than going with what we know, unfortunately.
Well, obviously, yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, as it is now, it's a pretty young side. You're playing, Dacos, Brown, Noble. There's kids already in that side. So, again, you get the balance wrong, and then they just the whole side starts getting mauled. And I think part of their structure breakdown is that they've just got some youngsters in there who aren't maintaining it. And that's also a price of being successful for a few years that I shouldn't say we squandered, but we did squander picks going back a few years. You look at guys like Scharenberg and Freeman, they haven't become mainstays of the side, but you throw in, someone else from that draft. The only one that comes to mind at the moment is someone like Cripps, who came low in the draft. Immediately, you look so much better. But those early picks, Kennedy, Broomhead, all those sort of guys, they didn't come on. So that's what you're seeing now. You're seeing a lack of the senior core, and the kids we have now, we hope the best for them for the future, but they are all relatively low picks.
Well, they're all about to be thrown into the deep end, I suppose, which is a reasonable segue into next game. So we play Adelaide Tuesday night.
Just before you go to see, what do you think of Braden Sire's game?
Sire, I don't think he was a standout by any stretch, but he looked a little bit better placed this week around, a lot more composed. Like, he didn't, watching the game, to me, have any flashiness about him, but he was solid. Well, he ended up with about 20-odd possessions at a reasonably high efficiency rate, but he'll only get better with time. You're about to tell me you hated him. No,
he typified what's happened at the club. He did some really nice things, but there's other times he just handballed to players being crushed, about to be crushed. And I said this to you, this is how myopic criticism of Collingwood players can become. Rupert Wills was doing the same thing, and people going, well, this is why it's terrible. And like, I'm watching Wills and thinking, yeah, he has had some terrible possessions, but he's doing some good stuff, but people are just remembering him by his terrible possessions. If you treated Sire by the same standard, you'd be criticising him too. And it's just like, well, hey, at the moment, they're all bloody feeding teammates to be sacrificed. They're all making poor decisions. So highlighting just, an individual for doing that is ridiculous unless they're really, really horrifically bad. Yeah, so go on. You're going to talk about we're playing Adelaide next week, next Tuesday.
Next obviously. Week. So we've got some big changes to make because we've got about 90% of the sides off injured this week. I'm actually just thinking about it. You brought up Wills then. I think this is probably the prime game that you could actually test whether Sire and Wills could play together in the same side. Has it ever happened?
No.
It'd be. The thing I think with Wills is Sire's pretty much he's a midfielder, but Wills, I reckon, his bullockness. What's the word I'm looking for? Aggressiveness of the football. I have no idea.
Aggression.
But I think you could play him on the ball, but you could also rest him in the forward line with that ability to lock the ball in that it actually may. Because at the moment, the ball leaves our forward 50 arc as quick as it gets in, and it's infuriating to watch. But someone that can actually hit some packs hard and bring the ball, or when the ball gets to the ground, keep it in there, could actually help some of the outside runners in the forward line. It wouldn't be a bad little tactic to try. I think but then again, maybe our hand is finally forced because I just don't know who's going to come in this week on the back of who we've gone out. So we're assuming that Hosky won't play again for the rest of his life.
Quaynor won't play, definitely. Quaynor won't play.
Quaynor is probably about to have both legs amputated tonight because of some malaria disease that's infected his open wound. Who was the third one that was injured tonight?
Huskinell, Treloar and Quaynor.
Treloar. His hamstrings have probably been torn off the bone again, so he's gone for the year. Who would you bring in to replace those immediately?
If they're the three that are out, definitely. And I think you seriously have to consider that you might not play Grundy.
Well, he deserves a rest.
Yeah. So the three that I would bring in, I'd definitely bring in Wills. I would possibly bring in Nathan Murphy. I don't know what their form's like in these scratch matches. You can't really judge anything.
Apples.
And Appley possibly, but I reckon I'll probably go for, like a Main or someone and bringing them back.
Well, Appley can come in and fill Hosky's role. That should almost be a given, surely.
Yeah. Look, if I had control of the side, what I'd do next week, and again, I'm just going on the players available. I don't know what their form's like. I don't know if they're carrying injuries. The only ones I'm excluding are the ones who are definitely out. Next week, I would bring Lyndon Dunn in. I'd play him at full back. I would play Roughhead at centre half back. I'd play Darcy Moore at full forward. I'd play side bottom in the pocket next to him. That would be the nucleus of my side. And I know that's not really playing toward the future in blooding youth, but I mean, there's no one really who can play in those key defensive roles who's young. And
let me throw another hypothetical at you. When Buckley brings back Main and Varco this week, where would you play him?
Main and Varco. Varco would have to play up forward. And Main. I just don't. Main, there's no point playing him forward because he can't kick a goal. So I'd have to play him at a half-back probably.
All right, so it's a given that Varco will be in defence and Main will be on the wing.
Yeah.
What else are we doing?
Scharenberg's the other one who might get back in.
I don't think he'll ever play again in Collingwood colours ever.
The thing with surely no one who's still fit will be dropped from the side. So it's going to
be who's left that's fit.
Yeah, but unless they really, because I know we've criticised Grundy for not having enough taps to advance. We've criticised everyone at the club about Grundy's tap work not being monopolised. But the last few weeks, he's really looked like he's struggling. And, surely he could do with a rest and he can play Cox as the ruckman. But the big problem there is you look at that midfield now, you've lost now Pendlebury and Treloar.
That's your two.
And that'd be your two primary midfield.
Yeah, the prime movers.
One thing with Treloar today is I actually think he got outside a few times and he provided a bit of sprint. I was like, oh, this is good to see again. But you've lost, of the players you've lost this year is Pendlebury, who's probably still, your number one player. DeGoey, who would be your number one forward. Howe, who's probably your number one or two defender. And now you've lost Treloar, who's your number two midfielder. So you've lost four of your top six players. I'd say Moore is one of the other ones there. And possibly Adams. I don't know if I've left someone out, but you've taken a really, really big chunk out of the nucleus of that side. So I don't know if, it's fortunate we're playing Adelaide because you're going to be playing a young side. If we're playing anyone outside of the bottom four next week, I would just be really fearing the worst.
All right. Well, let's look at the game in isolation then. So Adelaide have not won a game since the start of August last year. They're coming up against us this week. How much do you think they'll win by?
Well, coincidentally, someone asked me today, do you think Adelaide will go winless? I was like, no, at some point they'll put one together because
you know what's about to happen.
Oh, well,
Search your feelings.
Look, I hope we get a bit of confidence from today. I don't know what I seriously have not watched any of the other games because I'm not even aware if they're wrong because they're all scheduled at bizarre times. And
I think there's one on now. It's about
there you go.
About midnight on Friday morning. There's probably a game on now.
Yeah, and I don't know what the makeup of all these other sides are. Like, I definitely don't know what Adelaide's side is anymore. They've lost half the team since that grand final a few years ago.
Well, literally, mentally, they've lost more than half a team.
Yeah, and we're going to go in with a very undermanned team, which, look, I know you can't blame anyone for some of these freak injuries. I mean, we can't blame the training surface or anything like that, or, being overtrained. Whatever happened to Quaynor was a freak accident. Even Hoskin Elliott was, how unlucky is he? He gets an injury, he comes back on, and then I don't know if he re-injured it or if they didn't realise how bad it was or if it was a total new injury. But geez, to actually have 2 collisions, it's really pretty unlucky. The goalie, what did he do? He tried to lay a tackle and he pulled his finger out of his hand. So it's another freakish injury.
Pointed to the scoreboard in defiance.
It's a collision injury, which is bad luck, but geez, it was a pretty bad collision injury. So you've had some real bad luck in personnel, and
stop us if you've heard this before.
Yeah. I don't know what point I was going to make. I think it was just like, we're really undermanned, and I don't know. As you said before, maybe you do go play young. Internally, they'd have to have some idea of how realistic premiership contention is. And when these players would return.
The most deluded entity on the planet. Would they have a clue what's going on?
I don't know. Yeah, but this is, they would have to know Pendlebury when he should be back. They'd have to know if Howe's a realistic possibility to come back for the season. I mean, they said that he was in Queensland training. And then you have the goalie. I don't know. I've never had finger injuries like that, but geez, to keep him out for 8 to 10 weeks. That must be some injury.
Unless tank. Give a tank.
The problem is, aren't they?
So you agree we should tank?
Aren't they committed to that academy player, Reef McInnes?
Oh, no, the AFL will change the rules for that now. There's COVID. We can't have him because he's in a COVID-free zone or something, and you'll give him to Gold Coast or something.
Oh, look, I prefer, if we're going to tank or end up in the bottom 4, I prefer they did that, because if we end up with a number 4 pick and then it's like, we're going to have to use it on Reece McInnes anyway, it's like, well, what was the point of fucking finishing that low?
Well, isn't this next draft about the Nick Dacos?
No, he's one after.
Is he? Is he still another year out of it? I thought this year coming up, was it? Oh, okay, move on. We don't care then.
Yeah. So he's a while away still. Yeah, I don't know what we're talking about. We're talking about Adelaide.
Yeah, about how much they're going to beat us by.
180 points.
Yeah, I'll probably go about 780,000. I'll stop there. No, look, I think we've probably got enough cattle in reserves to get over Adelaide. They're a very ordinary side, but they are going to snark a win at some point. You just, in your heart of hearts, you just probably expect them to be us. But I think we should have enough. And that maybe, today was enough to say that even in the face of adversity, you managed to snatch a win. We could do it again. But the reality is we aren't contenders this year. So, again, I'll go back to what's the point? But
I think the thing that
I don't think anyone goes out there to lose. So I think they'll probably win next week by about a point.
Didn't Melbourne do it for about 12 years? I think...
Oh, they're still doing it. They'll always do it.
I think my biggest issue, I've probably said that about 9 times. My biggest issue is last week they would have watched that game and they would have said, well, look, we didn't use the ball wisely going forward. And you
have chosen wisely.
They come into this game and they do exactly the same thing. They don't use, they do it even worse. They use the ball even more unwisely going forward. And this is the biggest problem is just you sit there going, I have no confidence that this will be addressed come next week. I have total confidence that we'll see the same disorganized clusterfuck forward entries next week. So the thing is, if you score like your 110 or whatever, and the other team, Sydney put a few goals on the board and put us under pressure. No, to be fair, I thought some of the umpiring was a little bit generous toward us and helped us, which is obviously payback for the tennis bullshit. But you look at like a better side might put a few more goals on the board, and we'll be 4 or 5 goals down and just spending the rest of the game trying to come back. And I'm just worried that we seriously do not have the structure or the system to match it with opposition. And if we fall into deficit, as we did last week, to actually produce enough ability to overhaul it and then run away with it, which, we might have done 2 years ago.
Yeah, no, I think it's just really, it's paper in the cracks at the moment. But anyway, I mean, we could argue the merits of tanking versus tanking, even though we should be tanking indefinitely. But I think, look, the club's about wanting to win games. Everyone goes out there to win games. They'll win.
To be fair, I don't think they'll need to tank the way they're playing.
I'm not sure. I mean, surely, where are we playing this week? Adelaide? How many limpet mines are buried under the Adelaide surface we weren't aware of?
I don't know.
Surely there'll be something like giant buzzsaw blades that come out of the goalpost this week, or something that the AFL weren't aware were there. So
it'll be like Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade with the booby traps.
That's it. Yeah. So it'll be like probably Bane in the Batman film, that someone will come out and blow up the understructure and the ground will collapse. Exactly where we're all milled together. I don't know. So what's your thoughts? We're going to lose by what? We've covered this.
Well, I don't know. I really don't know what to think anymore. I really think it's amazing, and we sort of said we're going to touch on this. The apathy that's developing within the supporter base towards this club.
This rant's going on now in its 4th hour.
Yeah, everyone is feeling disenfranchised. I shouldn't say everyone, because there's still sheep. But there's a lot of people who are
sheeple. Get the pronoun right.
There's a lot of disenfranchisement about where we are, where we're going, and the confidence in the incumbent to bring us somewhere better. And you've seen some really, I don't know, you consider loyalists who have jumped off the bandwagon and just saying, well, fuck, that's it. We're done.
I think those of us who have been around for 17 centuries can smell what's about to happen. And it's just tiring to see it happen year in, year out. 18, you had a chance to snatch a flag. And you think that the hard thing is like, everyone else seems to snatch a fucking rare one out of the air. We just never, ever seem to pull it off. We probably, we beat St Kilda in 2010, a side with a more tragic history than ours. 1990, we needed a whole bunch of fucking bizarreness to happen. And look, we may have still won because they were a pretty good side. But it just, again, history looks back at it and says, well, with the draw, then Essendon had that 74-day break. They just were flat from again, something bizarre happened to work in our favour. But every other loss was just par for the course, and I just don't see where. I look at each year thinking hopefully this year could be different, but then the same old stuff just keeps happening over again. It's Groundhog Day. I've made that gag I think 84 times since we started the rant, but it just feels like the same nightmare over and over again. And now it's the injury curse, and you think, well, we bemoan the surface at wherever they train. What's it called this week? Lexus Centre or wherever, thinking that was the cause, and now you take them out of that, and then the freak injuries occur. I just don't think it's anything other than the fact that they're cursed. I can only put it down to that. It's witchcraft.
Well, you go into
I'm going to the extremes now. That somewhere in the past there was a Collingwood demon, and he's unleashing hell on earth now.
Well, you go back to 2018 when we started the rant, and we said we'll start it because the season will probably be like the one we're experiencing right now. And then the first 2 weeks we lost the Hawthorn GWS, and then what ended up happening was somehow we got our shit together. And honestly, even though we got our shit together, I just kept waiting for it to implode, as it had done in the previous years. There's a couple of years, I think 14 and 15, where we
generally
started well.
Is the most consistent expectation a Collingwood supporter has.
But particularly under Buckley, because I think it was 14-15, they were like 8-2 or 7-2, and then we just lost. We just, we still didn't make the finals, even though we had a lot of injuries. And in 2-18, we're getting injuries that are happening. But as we've talked about before, some of them were really fortuitous. You lost Reed, but you brought Myercheck into the four line. I was like, oh, this works really well. Probably the worst one was the Treloar one, where somehow I've never seen it in the history of football. He tore both hamstrings in the same incident.
It's almost like someone having a gash from their kneecap to their ankle and their leg. I see that every other week.
And then we marched to the finals, and Goldsack made this amazing recovery from an ACL. In 6 months. So I think it was like the second shortest turnaround or whatever it was. He plays as an undersized fullback. We go to Perth and we lose to West Coast in the qualifying final. We then beat GWS in a really horrible game. And then we smash Richmond, which no one expected us to do. And I have this insane dream for this fucking club that one day it'll all just click and they'll get it right, And I've had that dream since fucking about 1981.
I think Martin Luther King had the same dream.
And when they've won flags in 90 and 2010, you can attest, because 2010 I was not happy even though we won the flag, because I was saying, well, fucking, if this is the only flag this squad win, then we've just wasted this squad. And I thought that in 90, I thought, oh, we're going to have a little dynasty. It didn't happen. 210 didn't happen. So going into 218, with all the shit we'd gone through with Buckley, injuries and, fucking all this speculation on his coaching future and all that, I was thinking, it's going to click. Finally, everything's falling into place and we can have our fairy tale, and it'll happen, and it'll be the rebirth of this club. And typically we lost by 5 points instead. And I just fucking walked away, and I was partly philosophical, but I was also like, this club just doesn't know how to succeed. No. And it can't create fairy tales like Richmond, like Bulldogs, like Sydney, because something deeply ingrained in the psyche and the collective of this club that's been cultivated over the last 60 years, even longer, has built, or it doesn't have the ruthlessness of a Hawthorn. It doesn't have, and it hasn't metamorphosed like bloody Richmond, went from a laughing stock to, this fucking really ruthless side. And we just don't seem to have that edge. And I got theories on why we don't have that edge, which people don't, some people don't invest in, which I think is just, I think the grandeur that surrounds this club undermines them, because it's like, why would you need to be hungry for success when everyone celebrates you for fucking existing? You lose. It's 2018. They lost that grand final. They walked off, and people were slapping their hands in the players' race. It was like, fucking be angry. I want not just the supporters. I want the players to be angry, and just, I'm sure they were, but just, you really want to see them seething to the extent where you think they're going to rectify this. And they didn't. They actually went backwards last year, and they're going further backwards. And there's other things I think that are wrong, but like, sitting here now as an old supporter, I just think this club doesn't have it. And it's, the current administration's had time to find it and build it. They haven't done it. The coaching staff's had time to do that. They haven't done it. And everyone else involved, like recruiters and medical staff, they haven't done it either. So, what this club should do is
cut the lot and start from scratch.
Yeah. And that probably means there's going to be a few years in the wilderness, but you know what?
Worse than every other year.
But I honestly, like I said, I don't really watch the other games. Like last year, I was probably watching a few. Watching the way sides like Brisbane and Carlton, have been constructed, where they have spines and they have midfielders and they have classy small forwards. Or Carlton not so much, but Brisbane obviously does. And I think, what you're going to do, Colin, you're going to get up there and you're just going to be playing one of these sides who's a lot more talented than you, and they're just going to fucking smash you out of the park yet again.
What a surprise.
Yeah. So
we denigrated back to this old conundrum, all on the basis of a win. It is colourful following this club.
But you go you go back to what I said earlier. It's the impermanence of the club. You don't have any confidence that whatever, like they found the victory, but you don't have confidence that's a building block to something better.
No, it's just
something.
It's a get out of jail free card for a week.
Yeah, so and what was the game? I think it was against West Coast where we kicked like 4 or 5 goals in the first quarter, and I was like, I don't feel confident at all that they'll maintain this, and they didn't. Against Richmond, they kicked like 4 in the first quarter and then 1 for the rest of the game or whatever it was. You have no confidence if they're in front that they'll maintain that lead, and you have no confidence if they win that they'll win again the following week. And it goes back again to 2014 to 2017, where they beat like the Geelong, who might be 4th or something. You think, oh, okay, we've fucking got our mojo. And then they'd lose to Carlton, who'd be like 17th. And you go, oh, well, that's what we're expecting. You just had no confidence that anything meant anything other than we would be frustrating and inconsistent. And whatever you saw that week wasn't probably what you're going to get the following week.
So you're backing us to win by 30 points this week now?
Oh, I don't fucking know. We're playing out. As an aside, because let's go into the scuttlebutt files, because I said I was going to do this. There's a rumor going around.
Well, welcome to hour 5 of the Collingwood Rant this week.
There's a rumor going around.
We've already lost our 3 listeners. Let's just keep going. Let's go for a record.
And then we'll talk about the Star Wars.
At the end of the day, we only invented this thing to entertain each other, and it's worked for 3 years.
There's a scuttlebutt going around that the AFL signed off on Buckley and Sanderson playing tennis, only to realise that they'd made a mistake afterward.
I don't believe that one.
Don't believe it?
No. Look, it's an excuse to get out of the stupidity of the whole situation.
No, not Collingwood. Collingwood's never been stupid.
And that, I believe that rumour was linked on a popular AFL Collingwood forum.
Was it our Facebook page?
I wouldn't be surprised if a certain president of the club posted that himself. But no, I don't buy into that one. Don't buy into it at all.
I'm buying into it. I'm going in for the conspiracies. I think they did it probably to build some 5G towers while Buckley and Sanderson were out.
You got to laugh. You have to laugh, don't you have to laugh? Yeah, no, I don't think there's anything in that. What else you got for me?
San Dimas High School football rocks.
Who?
Oh, it's Bill and Ted's reference. What good are you to me? I think that's it. Any final thoughts on this club?
Nah, it can all get fucked.
I agree.
Look, I said my stance is now is like, it's quite simple. If you can't win a flag this year, and we can't win a flag this year, don't play to win. I'd rather see you build for the future. But then again, the driving force behind these decisions are diluted. So I don't think you ever get that balance right. You can't make the right decisions about what the future of the club needs to look like because you're hung up on the past and you're hung up on how misguided you are about how good you think your list is. And don't point to 2018. We failed just as much as we failed every other year. So who gives a fuck? But this tenure over the last 9 years isn't working. And I don't really know what's the point in actually deluding yourself to think it's going to suddenly magically come good. And then look, the coach may be the most wonderful bloke walking the planet. And I don't particularly blame him in isolation. It's just everything wrong with Collingwood is Collingwood itself. And this club's never going to change until it reinvents itself. It needs to be a ruthless arse of an entity to be successful. And it's something that Collingwood used to be good at, and it hasn't been good at for about 70 years.
In some small defence for Buckley, I think when they decided to rebuild coming out of 2013, and they obviously had a mandate, well, look, we're going to recycle the list, rejuvenate the list. Heater was cut free and Daisy was allowed to walk. And then you had Wellingham and Dawes who were traded out, and then other guys like Jolie and Didak who probably could have gone another year, but they were delisted and all that. And I'm not talking about the injuries to, like guys like Schoenberg and Freeman and Brumet and Kennedy and Ramsey and all those sort of players. It's just, I don't see a lot of logic in the assembly of their list where I think and I stand to be corrected, but in the history under Buckley, and I know I believe he doesn't have a lot of say in the lists that have been given to him in the past, but in 9 years, so they get about 4 picks on average from each draft, they've drafted 4 key positioners in Will Kelly, Sam McClarty, Jonathan Marsh, and Corey Galt. And you'd think if you're going to build a side, you'd probably want to actually have that spine, which is always considered the most important part of the side. They haven't given him that. Like, they gave Malthouse, Brown, Reed, Dawes, and Cloak, and then they had a few other guys like, John Anthony and that, and then they had Wakeland and Presti prior to that, and Clement. Is over the last 9 years, they've just totally ignored tall players, and they don't seem to have recruited a lot of, they recruited one guy who could have become a brilliant goal sneak in that Carl Kirby. Haven't seen it with anyone else. It's been a very, very bland list build, which has given him a very, very bland squad, which probably explains why you get things like Main turning into a defensive winger, and Mychek going from defence to forward line and all that sort of stuff. So their list build on the Buckley has been, and they're trading and recruiting, where they've been picking up guys like Jordan Russell and Clinton Young and Quentin Lynch and all that. It's like it hasn't exactly been the greatest side on paper that they've given him.
No.
And I feel bad because I've said this before. I feel really bad for guys like Pendlebury and Dane Swan and Travis Cloak, and other players like Sidebottom, who busted their asses to build this side into a on-field powerhouse in 2010, 2011. And you would have thought that they'd probably think, well, we can enjoy this for a little bit. And within a couple of years, it was dismantled and then sent into the wilderness for another 4 years, which is, you're looking at 6 years now of careers that usually go, about 12 years. So it's like over half their careers have just been playing in horrible sides with little system. It's just been like pissing away champagne. It's been like pouring champagne down the sink, particularly like guys like, look at Swan. He was just such a great player going into 2010, and he just sort of really faded in Buckley's tenure. Cloaks, all of them. So just disappointing.
They deserve better. And then, look, I always maintain, and I'm sure we covered this in about 74 other different rants, that we should have won 11 if we hadn't fucked up the Malthouse thing. And we should have then become what Hawthorn ended up becoming, as a side with such a dominant spine and a dominant support structure, that we just went out to the league and picked up those recycled players and turned them into premiership players. The likes of Josh Gibbs and all those sorts of ones that ended up going to Hawthorn and reinventing themselves.
Josh Gibson. Bryce Gibbs.
Gibbs. But they're the ones that should have come to us and filled a role as we had some of the aging turnover, and we probably would have won 3 or 4 flags in that period. But that's not the Collingwood way. We're at more risk to ourselves of stopping success than any other entity in the entire known universe.
Well, you go to 211, and Hawthorn and Collingwood played in the prelim, and Hawthorn had won the flag in 28, and Collingwood had won in 210, and then Geelong won in 211. And 211 was the first year of Gold Coast Suns, and 212 was the first year of Greater Western Sydney. And those two clubs had monopolies on all the young talent for about 4 years. So drafts were completely compromised. Now, going out of 211, Hawthorn sort of said, well, what do we need? And they went and got Ben McAvoy, and they went and got Brian Lake. They picked up players that were just the finishing touches on a pretty strong list. Whereas Collingwood said, well, let's dismantle this list, and during a compromised era, let's rebuild. So even when they were getting draft picks in some of those seasons, they were getting access to talent who would have gone lower in the draft if young players hadn't really been zoned off to those expansion clubs. So they picked the worst time to go through a rejuvenation of the list. And I think that also, has come out in their list build. So their strategy was just mind-boggling. And I've always said that, like, I have no doubt with Buckley, because if you've read his autobiography, All I Can Be, he talks about when he arrived at Collingwood as a player in 1994, and he said that the list felt complacent. He goes, it felt like a lot of these guys, they'd climbed the mountain in 1990 and they didn't have the same hunger to do so again. And I'm pretty sure it was Craig Kelly, who's his manager, but Craig Kelly was saying what we should have done was we should have traded out some players while they had value to rejuvenate the list. So I have no doubt that come 212, 213, when that side wasn't performing to Buckley's expectation, he just clicked and thought, this is like 1994 again. These guys don't have the same hunger. I will trade out and rejuvenate the list. And it just totally blew up in their faces.
What a shock.
Well, you know, I mean, to not be facetious, I think if they actually kept Malthouse, like I wasn't always a fan of Malthouse's coaching, but things were working so well in 210 to 11. If they had kept Malthouse, I have no doubt they would have won, at the very least, one more flag.
Oh, definitely.
And the thing, you know, we talk about the compromised era because of the expansion clubs, is because that existed. That meant clubs who were trying to rebuild weren't getting access to the talent they needed to finish off their list builds. So they weren't going from 8th to 2nd or 3rd because they weren't getting access to talent who could have pushed them up that high. I mean, I think Richmond in 211 might have ended up second last or something, and they got pick 6. So usually you get pick 2, but they got pick 6 instead. So clubs weren't able to improve themselves to the extent that they had in the past, which just meant that, like, if you were up top as a contender, you weren't getting the challenges over that period that usually would evolve. So Hawthorn got to capitalize on that. Good on them. They fucking had intelligence in the way they advanced through that era, whereas we just did the stupidest things. I shouldn't say the stupidest thing possible. The stupidest things possible.
It's the Collingwood way.
Anyway,
right.
I think that's probably it. What are about 9 hours into this?
We're about 74 days into this now. It's actually, I've seen, it's like the time machine here. I'm looking out the window and the sun keeps rising and setting. And
have you,
there's fashions in the window changing. It's amazing. Yeah, go on.
As the site,
you clearly have no intention of stopping, so keep going.
As an aside, there's rumours going around that Disney will erase the Star Wars sequel trilogy from canon.
All right, let's get up another 42 days.
No, I'm just bringing that up because I'm just sort of hoping, can we just maybe go to Collingwood and say, can we erase the last 9 years from canon?
Well, it would mean that the playing list would have to go back to wearing bowler hats and knickerbockers.
Well, can't see. Knickerbockers might have protected a shin from being slashed open.
Well, that's a fair point, actually. Maybe they were onto something 100 years ago.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it from us.
Finally.
Unless you want to hear the Star Wars rant.
Let's just stop recording and start that one up now. Find us soon on the Star Wars rant. It's probably the greatest thing you'll never listen to.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll be back. Well, I can't even say next week.
It's about 10 minutes from now.
So long.
Let's just make this a live thing and just stay with us. We'll actually live broadcast the game.
Well, it'd be good that someone does it. Commentary was excruciatingly bad.
Second, the first ball's been bounced, and I can't believe the entire midfield has been impaled on pudgy stakes.
What are pudgy stakes?
I don't know. Wasn't it something that was in the Vietnam War where they had the sticks buried in the ground? Were they punji or something they're called?
I don't know.
Okay, I've made so much shit up tonight I can't even keep track.
Anyway, that's it from us, definitely.
All right, everyone, go to bed.
Later.
Catch.